As a physical therapist, I'm all about strengthening, especially for my senior clients. But if I have a senior client that hasn't really done a lot of strength training and maybe is even a little intimidated about going to the gym, I have them start out with a basic exercise routine that they can do at home, no special equipment, just to get them started. But there is one key important thing that I tell them. Hey everyone, welcome to the channel. Ed Dubu, physical therapist from Integrative Physical Therapy in beautiful, sunny Bellingham, Washington. The one piece of advice that I have for my senior clients that are just starting a strength training program is to not so much train the muscle as to train the movement. So for example, you could grab a weight and you can sit there and train your bicep, sure. Or you can train the movement of pulling, which will increase the strength of the bicep, but it's a more functional movement. So what I have them do is focus on 5 functional movements first, and then worry about isolating muscles later. So the first one is pushing. So imagine pushing a shopping cart in the grocery store, and then carrying, like carrying a grandchild or carrying groceries back to the car, and then pulling a cart, pulling a wagon, and then learning how to hip hinge properly at the hips, so that we can learn to bend properly without stressing out the vertebrae and discs in our back. And finally, we need to strengthen up the squatting movement. Think about how many hundreds of times a day that we get up and down from a chair. That surprisingly gets difficult as we get older. And don't forget to pick up your PDF, 5 Hidden Reasons for Pain. It's absolutely free. I'll put a link down below. You can grab it from my website. Now back to the video. If you have some small handheld weights, that's great, but if not, a couple cans of soup will get us started. All right, let's do this. First movement we're going to work on is pushing. So we'll just do some wall push-ups. So you're going to come to the wall. I want your hands about shoulder height. Step out away from the wall. Scapula back and down. So scapula in your back pocket. Come down and back out again. Now you'll notice with my elbows, I'm not going straight out. I'm kind of bringing them back at a 45-degree angle. So not out here, but more in this angle of motion here. Gonna get nice and tall. I'm gonna engage my core, and I'm gonna come in, pause, and I'm gonna push out. All of these exercises are to be done for 3 sets, anywhere from 8 to 12 to 15 repetitions. Once that starts to get a little bit easier, you can come to something like the back of a chair or a counter. What you're basically trying to do is just lower yourself down, and then eventually you can start doing push-ups maybe on the floor or on your knees. To strengthen the pulling motion, this is when you'll need a can of soup, or if you have a hand weight. Use the back of a chair for a little bit of support. You're going to hinge at the hips just a little bit. Let the weight hang, scapula back and down, and then we're just going to work on pulling up, just like so. What we're doing here is we're working the bicep as well as the back, and we're strengthening up that pulling motion. Imagine trying to start your lawnmower or start a weed eater or pull a cart or open up a heavy door. All of those things require pulling strength. As you get stronger, you're obviously going to need a little bit more resistance or weight. Now we're going to talk about carrying. So in this situation, cans of soup might not be enough weight. But what you can do is grab maybe a couple of 1-gallon jugs and fill it up with water and grab onto those. 1 gallon of water is roughly 8 pounds. And then you're going to practice grabbing it, and then you're just going to walk. And what I want you to do is I want you to walk for 50 steps, and that is considered 1 set. Put the weight down, rest, come back and repeat that for 3 sets total. And while you're doing this, make sure that you've got good posture. Your scapula are back and down, so your shoulder blades are back and down. You're engaging your core. You've got a tight grip with your hands, and then we're working on walking. This is also called a farmer's carry, and I love this exercise because it's so functional. Imagine taking a wheelbarrow and walking behind a wheelbarrow, or like I said earlier, a couple of bags of groceries out of the car, and you got to bring them into the house up a flight of stairs. So learning to carry something is great for grip strength as well as core stability, and it puts a little extra weight in your legs, help build bone mass density. Learning to bend forward without stressing the discs and the little facet joints of our back is critical. So rather than bending forward and rounding out your spine and putting stress into the low back, what I want you to do is learn how to hinge at the hip. And the best way to do that is to grab yourself a broom handle, PVC pipe, whatever you have, golf club. 2 contact points. One's going to be your tailbone, which is right through here, and the other one's going to be the back of the head. Slight bend in your knees, and then what you're going to do is you're going to drive your hips back and learn to bend forward at the hips. If you do the hip hinge correctly, what you should feel is just a little bit of a stretch of your hamstrings at the bottom and not a lot of low back pain or tightness. Now, if you do it incorrectly and bend from the low back, the moment you do that, you lose the contact point in the low back. So really make sure you're working that hip hinge properly. I want you to do 3 sets of anywhere from 8 to 12 to 15 repetitions, and then use the hip hinge for the hundreds of times that we bend forward. If we're cooking, cleaning, brushing our teeth, washing our face, anything, I want you to keep the curve in your small back, drive the hips back, and take the weight onto your hip and back muscles and not the little facet joints and discs of our spine. The next movement we're going to work on is squat, basically getting ourselves up and down out of a chair without using our arms. I've got many clients that have to use a toilet bowl riser because they literally can't get themselves up off the toilet. But that's only because they've got weakness of their hips and legs. So what you'll do is you come to a chair, fold your arms across your chest, and go ahead and sit down. And then you're going to come forward, keeping your head up, and stand up again. As this starts to get a little bit easier, what you can do is instead of resting all the way down, I want you to hover. So come back and hover, and then squeeze your glutes and come up again tight. So the whole time what I'm doing is I'm using those strong muscles of my hips to come up. If you find that the chair is maybe a little bit too low, what you can do first is use your hands to give you just a little bit of support to help you come up, the least amount of support that you need. Or what you can do is put a pillow down on the chair to make it a little bit higher so it's a little bit easier for you to come up. When it comes to strengthening, 2 to 3 times a week is ideal. 3 times would be better, but at the very least, give me 2 times a week of strengthening. As you start to get stronger, please increase the intensity because the strengthening program has to be progressive, which means if you're using 1 pound today, hopefully next week you're using 2 pounds or you're doing a few more repetitions. All right, if you have any questions about beginning strength training programs, please let me know. Please subscribe to the channel if you found it helpful so you never miss another one of my videos. All right, take care, keep exercising, and get strong.